Hello and welcome back. Alright, in this video we are going to learn about decision making in your code. Because sometimes you just need to make some choices. Decision making is also referred to as branching. Branching is essentially anywhere your code does not follow a linear path. So if you hear branching, they're probably talking about some decision making. Alright, so in C++, the main way that we're going to be making decisions in our code are with these things called if statements. So an if statement looks like this. We have the if keyword followed by a space, followed by parentheses, followed by this thing, and inside these parentheses, there's our condition. And our condition is going to be something that's going to evaluate to true or false. If that condition is true, then the code that we have here in between our in between our curly braces, that gets executed. So what is a condition? So like I said, it asserts an expression as true or false, as 1 or 0. Remember, true is 1, false is 0. So here's some example expressions. We haven't talked about these operators yet. We will shortly. But some examples of an expression that would evaluate to false are 1 equals 0. That's obviously false. The special keyword false for Boolean types, that obviously is going to evaluate as false. And then we can do some kind of comparative expressions. So like 3 is greater than 2. That's true. Okay, so sometimes we actually want to write an if statement that's going to have code that gets executed if our condition is true. But then we also want to write code if our condition is false. And so that's what this great else keyword is for. So you have your normal condition on top, and then that condition, or that if block, is followed by an else block. And inside the curly braces is where your code that you want to have run if your condition is false. There's actually one more construct we can do. We can actually chain the else concept with the if, and we can actually evaluate multiple conditions. So let's say you wanted to execute code if your variable I is equal to 2, you want to run some code. If it's equal to 4, you want to run some code. And if it's equal to any other number, then you want to run some code. Well, the else block is the perfect setup for you there. And so it's just the same. Basically, you follow else with a space, and then you have the if keyword, and then you get the same construct. You should note that the else block at the very end, down here, this guy is always optional. You do not need to include it, but it's there if you need to. So let's talk about conditions a little bit more. So we have some mathematical expression operators that we can use to evaluate expressions on numerical types. And so these are our standard operators that we're used to in normal mathematics. We just have a little bit different way of representing those in our programming code. So the first two are pretty straightforward. We have the greater than or less than symbol, which evaluates to true if the left number is greater than the right number. Less than evaluates to true if the left number is less than the right number. So 2 is less than 4 is true. 2 less than 1, false. So to do greater than or equal to, there's no easy way to do the underbar that we normally have underneath the greater than and less than symbols. So we just follow the greater than or less than character with an equal sign. And so when you see those two characters grouped together, we know that's the greater than or the less than operator. For equality, we use two equals. And so we do that so that the compiler can distinguish an equality check versus an assignment. So if you remember when we were assigning values to our data types, to our variables, we used a single equals. Well, the compiler needs to be able to distinguish that assignment versus an equality check. And so when we do equality checks, we use two equals. For not equal, there's no equal with a slash through it. on our keyboards or easily accessible. So we use a exclamation point in front of the equal sign. This is also referred to as a bang, sometimes referred to as not. So if someone just says not, they usually mean the exclamation character. There's another set of expression operators we can use with conditions. So you don't have to have just a single condition. You can actually chain multiple conditions together. And we do that using the AND or the OR operators. So we have some examples over here on the right. So if we look up here, we have the true and false. So this basically allows you to have a condition that will be run if both of these evaluate to true. So obviously true and false is going to evaluate to false, as one of the members is indeed false. The third logical expression operator is the not symbol, which the bang, the exclamation point. What that does is it takes the opposite of what your condition was evaluated to. So if you just had true and you did not, so you had not true, then it would evaluate that condition as false. And so let's look at a few of the other examples and we can see how we can chain these together, and we can actually do a little bit more tricky composition of those chaining as well. So we have the false or true. So the OR one will return true if any of the conditions are true. So in this case, false or true would return true because one of the conditions or one of the expressions inside this returns true. So let's look at the next one. We have 1 equals 4. That's false. And 0 equals 2. That's false. So we're doing AND. Both sides are false, so we return false. One thing to note is that the AND is actually what's called a short-circuiting operator. In C++, if you have a condition, a chained condition, that is separated by only ANDs, then the compiler will actually fail on the first failure. Or it'll stop evaluating the rest of the conditions once it determines that the condition is evaluated to false. So in this case, it would do 1 equals 4 and it would actually stop and just return false because we know we're doing an AND. So in the code and things that we've learned, that actually doesn't really matter. But if you ever were to call like a function and you ANDed them together, you should just be aware that your function actually might not get called. So be careful when you do that. So let's look at the next one. So what we have here is we have not, and then we have in parentheses. So parentheses is our way of telling the compiler to order or to change the order of your normal evaluation, just like the order of operations. So parentheses. So what this is going to do is it's going to give us the opposite value of whatever this gets evaluated to. So we have true or false. So that's going to evaluate to true. But then since we have the not, it's going to change that true and return back false into our condition. Alright, and now we have our last one that we're going to take a look at. We have true, and then we have and then we have parentheses, false or true. So what we have is false or true returns true. Then we have true and true, so our entire condition would evaluate to true. Alright, so that's the quick intro to if statements and decision making in our code. I suggest that you kind of practice that in some of your programs that you are writing, right? You are actually trying this stuff out in your own C++ code. You should be. But so yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thanks.